Low income, great financial habits. How do people earn less than average, yet somehow amass millions of dollars over a lifetime? Occasionally, we'll see stories in social media of people who died with millions and millions of dollars, and they worked some low wage job for 30, 40 years of their entire life. And people have no idea how these people ended up amassing fortunes. I have had the good fortune as a financial advisor of encountering some of these people who are on the trajectory to becoming multimillionaires, but who actually have really low income. How do they do it? Stay with me. So first, for the sake of this video, I want to determine who is low income. The average income across America is $60,000 a year. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to define people who are lower income as anyone earning less than $60,000 a year. I also want to bring up the fact of inflation. Prior to 2019, I think everyone can say that the cost of living in the United States, while high, was manageable. And if you had a salary of $60,000 a year or somewhere in that ballpark, you could achieve many, not all, but many of the factors of the America dream. Now, fast forward 6 years into 2025, and the average American salary of $60,000 is barely sufficient for many parts of America. Everything from food to transportation to education to healthcare to housing has skyrocketed since COVID. And the nature of inflation means that those values will never come down. So, a lot of people who are lower income, who became multimillionaires, just operated in an environment where their dollar went a lot further until if and until salaries in the United States start catching up to inflation, I think it's going to be much harder for the average Americans to pull off this feat. So, who are these people who are low income earners but who are millionaires? There's certain professions that I work with that have a high propensity of millionaires. And of course, people who work in like finance or accountants, so a lot of those people end up millionaires, engineers, and teachers, believe it or not. And teachers don't necessarily earn a lot of money, but they're very good with money and they're very diligent. One of the first things that people who are lower income but want to become millionaire need is a steady job. This is a job that you're going to be at for 20 plus years. I know steady jobs, especially for millennials and Gen Zs, are quickly becoming a thing of past, but there are a few steady professions that are still holding on. Until very recently, government jobs were considered steady. That's completely being rewritten in the span of the past 9 months now. Education, teaching, city, local government. There are certain jobs where you can and you are actually rewarded for staying for long periods of time. And there's little change that happen in those jobs. So all the people in the category of low income but high net worth, they have net worth in millions, have stayed in a job for at least 20 years, and that job has been steady. Sometimes they move up, but sometimes they don't. They're in a specialist position. They really don't have any desire to take on any additional responsibilities. So they get in a good job and they just stay put. The job may not be exceptionally well paid, but it does the trick and they lead low stress, low intensity, but steady life. And for some people, that is all they need to build millions. The next thing that I notice about people who are low income but high net worth, who are millionaires, is that they have very low cost of living. They are very intentional with every single dollar and very thoughtful in how they spend their money. I had a client who lived, he was a man who lived with an older woman. And when I say older woman, she was a woman in her 80s. He had a small in law apartment in her home. He decorated it with furniture from Facebook or Goodwill. Or furniture that was gifted to him by friends. He paid ultra low rent in San Francisco, which I thought was very suspicious. But the arrangement that he had was that he fixed things around the house and ran errands for the older woman and in compensation for a serious reduction in rent. So he was paying under $1,000 a month for a small in-law unit in a pretty decent neighborhood. He worked, but he had no need for a car. His 9 to 5 job was accessible by walking and by bicycle. So he simply got a bicycle and rode that back and forth every single day. He was able to save $4,000 a month pretty much and invest that money over time. And he was able to keep this lifestyle going for many years. Now, the problem came in when his landlord died unexpectedly. It wasn't really unexpected. She was an older woman, but the housing situation turned over pretty quickly and he no longer had that really affordable cost of living. But he had built up so much money in the time that he had lived with her that he had options. He had options. So that's an example of somebody who has an exceptional situation, very thoughtful in how they live their lives, set up a special arrangement with someone for a discount on housing and got his items, even like clothing and things like that. He typically bought secondhand. People, I think a lot of Americans, a lot of things that this gentleman did was a bridge too far. Living a secondhand life can be stressful. I know I like new furniture and new things. I have a few secondhand pieces of clothing, but typically I want my clothing to be new and just for me. And a lot of people aren't willing to make that sacrifice of living with secondhand item in order to save a lot of money. But the reality is with furniture, secondhand often makes sense. Furniture, it has a life cycle. It's like a car. It's like buying a new car. It depreciates pretty quickly. If you sell it, it never has the same value. I've probably, as an adult, spent tens of thousands of dollars on furniture just to end up selling it or getting rid of it or having it in storage. And so I see the point of living a very low cost, very intentional life. The tens of thousands of dollars that I've spent on furniture could have been invested, but I'm married to this idea of having new furniture all the time. If you want to be low income, high net worth, you have to have a low cost of living and you have to be very intentional and thoughtful with your money and how you're spending money to support your life. The next thing is that these people save and invest a minimum, bare minimum 30% of their income. Oftentimes, they're doing a lot more. It's hard for a lot of Americans to conceptualize spending 30% of their income on investments or savings, but it's because so many Americans are living up to the hilt. These people are living very affordably and very thoughtfully. So they always have money at the end of the month that they can put away in investments of savings. Oftentimes, 30% is on the low end. I've seen some people who can get away with 70% of their income is going into savings or investment, but that is more the exception than the rule. Usually it's around 40 or 50%, which is still a pretty significant amount of money that is being put towards the future. But basically, their very low and intentional cost of living allows them to put away an astonishing amount of money for the future. They're also long-term investors. I've definitely noticed about that about them. They don't believe in things like Robinhood.com. And I have clients who have Robinhood accounts, but these are people who are very long term. They set it and forget it. They research what they invest in. If they're buying stock, they know how to go and research and look up information and read about that stock before making a decision to invest. Or they invest in maybe a low cost ETF and just leave it be to accrue over the long term. But bottom line, they're not making rapid changes. They're not day traders. They're not short term. Everything is bought and held for the long term, and they make good research, thought out investments. Next, they don't really openly talk about money among their friends and family. And that's why their friends and family often don't know their true financial situation. And they want to keep it that way. They don't want to go into the workplace and announce that a low level bookkeeper, even though they're earning $60,000 a year, they have a net worth of $3 million. They don't want that to be known. They don't want their family to know. They don't want the public to know. Because I think they intrinsically understand that allowing people to know their financial situation is just going to invite drama and problems that they just don't want to deal with. Oftentimes, the only person that they talk to openly about their money is the financial advisor, me. And many people in their lives do not know their situation and they do not have any intention of sharing their situation until after their death, when whoever they bequeath their assets to realize that this person had a lot more than they let on. So they don't really openly talk about money except in a few key circumstances with their financial professionals, and they prefer to keep their situation secret as long as possible from friends, family, coworkers, and colleagues. They stay the course. They don't get spooked by downturns in the market. They just keep ahead. If they're doing dollar cost averaging, they're going to keep doing dollar cost averaging. they're often not paying attention to what's going on in the broader financial picture. A lot of times, they're not necessarily regularly watching the news or paying attention to what's going on in kind of the macro environment. If they need information, they go and seek that information and then they shut it off and continue with their lives. And I really admire that aspect of their personality, that they're not following the stock market or following the news on the day-to-day basis. They go seek information when they need it, they shut it off, and then they go on with their lives. And that's a very admirable quality in our 24-hour news-centric world now. And finally, I just want to say these people who are low income, behind net worth, they have a long haul picture. They know they're not going to be millionaires in their 20s, probably not in their 30s, not even in their 40s, but they know they will get there. And they know they will get there. And they feel, I think, in our society, especially American society, there is a lot of pressure and a lot of consternation about money, especially among younger people. And I don't really see that among this crowd. They know they are walking their own journey and they know that their journey is unique and will take longer than many people probably want to invest in an activity. But that's the key often to building wealth, especially when you're building wealth on a low income. You have to stay the course and you have to maintain consistency. And I think it's a lost art in America to remain consistent on a plan of action. And that's why many people never become millionaires. So there you have it. Low income but great habits can really make you a millionaire. If you found this information useful, please like, share, and subscribe.